Kia ora. Thanks for tuning in to the We Fucking Love Startups podcast, brought to you by Talent Army.
Hey everyone, Troy Hammond here, and welcome back or welcome to the We Fucking Love Startups podcast. Today is actually a special series that we're going to be pushing out over the next couple of months. We're currently sitting at the Sunrise Festival or the Sunrise Conference by Blackbird. It's a conference for founders to hear the stories of other founders and really help network, uplift, read the playbook and hear the playbook from other founders. So it's quite a unique series that we're pushing out. They're going to be shorter episodes, 30-minute episodes, really amazing guests, and so I hope you really enjoy them. On this episode, we're chatting with Jon Gelsey. Jon's a super lovely guy, like ex-founder and CEO of Xnor.ai. Previously to that, it was Auth0. Super interesting guy and really, really open about like the industry, how to get acquired, what to do, some of the challenges, some of the thinking. Just really love chatting with him. So strap into this one. I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's a short half-an-hour one where he talks about how to be acquired, how to build, and literally like some challenges that in New Zealand that we can get better at. How do you introduce yourself now that you've like founded and sold a couple of companies and you're now unemployed?
I guess usually I don't really introduce myself.
So if someone comes up to you at this event and they go, "Hey, Jon, what do you do?"
It depends. If they look interesting, then I say, "Hey, I'm doing advisory work and sit on boards, and pretty active in the innovation ecosystem." If they don't look interesting, then it's I'm unemployed. I got fired, and the last company I was worked with, they had an acquisition, and I got fired, and what can you do?
Apple fired me. Yeah,
yeah, because they wanted the engineers, they didn't want the CEO or the marketing people. Yeah, and it's kind of cool because I actually have one of the patents that I've got the name on is in the iPhone 15.
Oh wow!
So, yeah, they got a really good deal with Xnor.
Yeah,
it was pretty amazing stuff that we had, and take that with Apple's distribution heft, and they're doing very well. They're getting a really good return on that acquisition.
So what is Xnor then for those that don't know?
Well, let's see. So Xnor.ai, we closed our sale to Apple right at the beginning of 2019. It was a machine learning company, probably is the sort of the shortest way to describe it. So the founders were these couple of brilliant academics at the University of Washington and in Seattle, and also the Allen Institute for AI, also in Seattle, founded by Paul Allen.
Yeah.
They had invented a bunch of techniques in machine learning, which is just a fancy way to say pattern recognition, that were really innovative, that sort of everybody was using. There's a model that was really popular in the sort of 2017, 2018 and beyond, called YOLO, called multi-object recognition, where one model can see like the cat and the bird and this cup of coffee at the same time. So super efficient. So they invented that. They were the writers of that kind of everybody was using. Simon Sager, the CEO of ARM, was presenting at a conference. One of the ARM developer conferences I was at, and was spent 20% of his time talking about Xnor, and how much we contributed, because everybody at the conference was using our models. So this was founded as an academic spinoff, and they're like, "Oh, we do cool IP. Now, what do we do with it?" You can do professional services, but that's not very, very scalable. Another thing, the guy, Mohammed Rastogi, the guy from Allen Institute, had invented something called binarization. Stop me if this is really boring. The architecture of a deep learning neural network is basically a decision tree. It's like, hey, is this element I'm looking at, this image or this sound or something, should I put it over here or put it over here?
Yeah.
And you're doing arithmetic. You're just doing a, floating point computation. So we figured out, or rather Mohammed and Ali, the other co-founder, Ali Farhadi, the professor at UW, figured out how to do it was a binary, an Xnor operation, hence the name of the company.
Yeah.
So that was really computationally cheap. And computationally cheap means I can use a 25-cent microcontroller instead of a fancy NVIDIA GPU. And so this is AI at the edge. So that was sort of what we said, look, we can do machine learning, we can do AI at the edge, because it was cheap enough in power consumption and actual physical dollar cost. So you could put it at the edge and put a bunch of them everywhere because it's cheap and ubiquitous and such. Super powerful.
Wow.
And so we were experimented with a business model. I came in because they were trying to figure out how to scale the thing up.
Yeah.
And those were great guys, and I wasn't really looking for something new to do, but they were sort of too amazing of a team to pass up. And
You came in as the business brain? Is that
yeah, they had founded the company, I guess, sort of a year and a half or so, order of a year, I guess, for like really getting it going before I signed up. And I originally signed up just as, look, I'll do half-time just to sort of help point you in the right direction. But after 3 months, they were like, you really should be CEO. Okay, this is too cool to pass up.
How long ago was this after your previous company? Like, was it straight away?
It was much too soon. I mean, I was originally planning to, just sort of chill out and, enjoy the sunshine. And, that kind of got boring.
Yeah.
I should have planned a little bit better for that. But, this came along and it was sort of interesting and I could be helpful. And so I was like, cool, let's do that. And so we were doing a bunch of professional services contracts that we scaled up to sort of 8 digits of US of revenue and sort of within about 12 months after I joined. And we're also working on a product because it's that was going to be using our ML to be super innovative.
Yeah.
And then we never launched the product because the acquisition happened before that product.
Can you say what the product was going to be? Or?
So yeah, it was what we were looking at. We got in a bunch of resonance was a very inexpensive way to look at inventory on grocery store shelves to find out if the shelf is empty or not or low and needs to be restocked. So if you walk, the economics are such, if you walk by a shelf in a grocery store and it's empty, you can't get the box of crackers you were looking for. That's like a big loss because it wouldn't have cost the grocery store any more if it had been right there for you to grab it. Especially if it's something like brand name crackers or soap or something like that. Those are all high margin items. Yeah. And so inventory management and avoiding empty shelves is like sort of a number one profitability dictator in the grocery store world. So we had these like super cheap battery operated, just fits on the pricing label lip of the shelf to look at the shelves on the other side of the aisle and tell you what's in and what's out.
Just computer vision,
just computer vision, doing pattern recognition. Yeah. Very inexpensive, very easy to maintain. We could deploy an aisle in like 10 minutes. And say, here, here's your aisle. You just look at it for a couple of days and see if it's actually helping you figure out if you should stock more rapidly or not. And so we got a bunch of resonance from grocery store US. We were starting with West Coast US grocery stores, a bunch of resonance. But again, we were like 6 weeks away from the initial deployment before at the time of the Apple deal closed. So.
All right, interesting.
Yeah.
My mind instantly goes into that product, and then I'm thinking about checkout without paying. Like all the elements that you could have done with that.
Yeah, there were a bunch of places we could go with it, and it all comes down to like most things is cost. This concept of hey, here's a computer AI to figure out what's on your shelf. Lots of people have tried that. It's all sort of expensive and undependable. Like one of our competitors, or I guess would have been a competitor because we had never quite launched. Had like a robot that would go down your grocery store aisles and scan the shelves, and it kind of looked like a Doctor Who Dalek, which is maybe not the best industrial design in a consumer environment.
Especially as you're doing your shopping and
it's like And Walmart deployed a bunch of them. So they were all excited, but it's Walmart. So they deployed in 1,000 stores and say, that's just a small test because we're Walmart.
Yeah.
And so they killed it after a year and a half because it was just really hard to maintain. You had to have do construction in the back of the store to have the place for it to go dock and recharge, and customers didn't like it. And anyway, we were doing something that was like really cheap and kind of really easy to use, and that seemed to very much resonate. We didn't know anybody else who had the core ML technology that could run in dumb and cheap enough devices that we did to be able to do something that was so simple. But never know what might have happened to that. But yes, it could have gone a bunch of places. And this is, quote, AI at the edge. It's powerful AI that runs on a dumb, cheap thing, processor, microcontroller, camera, whatever, at the edge. And there's billions of those. And if you can make them a bit smarter at low cost, there's a lot of money in that. So.
It's an interesting time for AI at the moment. Machine learning, that's for sure, right? Like I feel like it's the Wild West,
Oh, it's great. I mean, it's kind of a natural evolution, and I don't know. I think I've been in 3 conversations the last 3 weeks about oh my God, AI, it's going to take over the world, and sentient, and I'm like, I ain't seen no sentient AI yet. There's lots of talk, but talk is cheap, and we've been talking about sentient AI since Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but what we have now is awesome pattern recognition. And we have pattern recognition like ChatGPT that by matching patterns does something that looks like it's, intelligently creating a paragraph, but it's just pattern recognition, it's just code.
Yeah.
And so I think the right analogy to modern ML or AI is Excel. It's like, cool. It's adding a column number is a lot faster than I could have on paper and pencil or on a calculator. Yay, it's an automation tool that'll accelerate me. It's taking that boring task that would have taken me half an hour and it's doing it instantly. Yay.
Yeah.
Is that, sentient and it's going to, take over the world? No. Will it put me out of work? Yeah, my job was like if I use the Excel analogy if my job was to, add numbers with a calculator, yeah, it'll put me out of work.
Yeah.
But it's increasing productivity, so that means there's going to be other jobs that I'll be able to move to.
And that's just been the evolution of life, like
bingo.
forever, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I mean, what was it? The Luddites. What were the Luddites? It's like automation, textile mill automation was like putting them out of work, and they're like, oh my god, we got to destroy this. I mean, every 20 years or so, you get this sort of surge, like in academia, that filters into popular media about, oh my God, automation is going to destroy everything. And, we'll all be working, 8-hour weeks and nothing to do. And it never becomes true. Because what happens is when you have automation, that just improves productivity, which means it improves wealth and it improves the ability or the need for even more people. Oh, and it actually makes possible sort of, how do I want to describe it? Sort of the non-directly productive jobs that are necessary for life, like, farming or, building a car or something like that. Now I can be an influencer and make a lot of money, not really doing anything other than
we just create jobs, right, to make money, right?
Yeah, talking. Yeah. I mean, so it's like, that's great, because now we've got sort of all the excess wealth in society because of this increased productivity from all this great automation that allows for these really cool jobs that we sort of couldn't afford before. You couldn't have had an influencer in, I don't know, primitive, Aboriginal American tribes or something like that, because everybody was busy, like, actually earning a living by hunting or something.
yeah, I know. The job titles and the jobs that people do now is insane, almost.
Yeah.
So you don't believe that there's going to be an AI future where we're all just going to be on the universal base, like UBI, sorry, and we're all just going to be off sunning ourselves on the beach and robots will be running around doing everything for us?
I doubt it. I mean, who knows? What do they say? It's really hard to make predictions, especially about the future.
Yeah.
But we've had automation that makes life easier for hundreds of years, and it hasn't sort of reduced the work week because people kind of like to work.
Yeah.
They like to get fulfillment from it, or, now I'm making enough money from doing sort of the critical stuff so that I can afford to do, the crazy stuff off on the side, my hobbies or something myself, And so, we haven't had like society evolve into, 8-hour work weeks or whatever. And so I don't think we will with the new automations that are, again, just increments to what we've seen over the last couple of centuries.
Yeah, I hope they do. I hope we move to at least a 4-day work week. I could use a longer weekend, as we discussed.
There's lots of jobs with four-day work weeks right now. That's a corporate architecture question rather than an automation or AI question.
It really is. It really is. So talk to me about the Apple deal, right? Like, how does that come about? Did they approach you? Did you approach them?
So I have to be careful because it's Apple, where if you say anything that they think is confidential, bad things happen.
Yeah.
Let me talk more generally about sort of how we came to the conclusion that an acquisition made sense, and then how we sort of ran the process, because that's often sort of opaque to people, and there's a lot of myth around it. So, like most companies that were growing fast and had cool technology, we would get into acquisition outreach, I don't know, once a month from whoever, a bunch of different companies.
Yeah.
And you always say yes to all of those.
Yeah.
And I guess, by the way, I should, as context, not only have I started and we've sold off to a couple of companies, but I was a corporate acquirer at Microsoft for 7 years, buying and selling companies for Microsoft, and then doing strategy and investments, and was a venture capitalist before that and such. So I've seen a bunch of acquisitions. You talk to everybody and you want to be friendly with everybody, because you don't know when might be the right time to do the acquisition. But when you do, you want to have a large portfolio of people you can reach out to, or like, oh yeah, I've heard of company X, that would be kind of cool to own them. And so my general advice for an acquirer, and we follow this at Xnor, is like, talk to everybody, be friendly with everybody, so everybody knows your capabilities. Everybody knows you as CEO, knows your senior staff, knows your technologists, and knows that they would be great additions to Mr. Acquirer's team at Google or wherever it is. Okay?
To the point where you get a non-binding offer, or just
No, you just want to be friendly. It's like, gosh, Amazon wouldn't it be great? We're working on this ML thing, and you're working. Maybe we could work together to be, awesome. Or I just wanted to let you know what we were up to. Stay friendly and be known as cool technology and potentially great team members. Okay, so now somebody comes in, and they've been offering you, something that's uninteresting. It's like, oh, well, I'll give you $10 million. It's like, well, sorry, I'm thinking about $1 billion. But actually, you don't say that. You just say, oh, well, that'd be great, but we're not ready to sell.
Yeah.
Eventually, something shows up, and you're like, oh, that's an interesting number. And so the best way so first off, that's usually is a verbal indication. And maybe they'll give you a term sheet, but you actually sort of, while it's still a verbal, before you have to sign a no-shop agreement, you now want to, you get the offer and you talk to your co-founder or the stakeholders. You say, this is, a couple $100 million or $6.5 billion like my company before that. And, it's like, this might be enough, sure. You now reach out to all the other folks that you've been cultivating over the last, 9 months, 12 months, 2 years, and they all know you.
Yeah.
And you say, hey, I just want to, let you know we've been, absolutely haven't been for sale, but then, somebody reached out and, we're thinking of strategic alternatives we could just, of course, raise money. That would be really easy, but, maybe we do an acquisition. I just want to let you know.
Yeah.
You don't say we're for sale. You say,
I'm strategic alternatives. Yeah.
Yeah. And, they'll respond and, ideally what you end up with is a couple of offers, verbal, is that then you can very politely and cautiously play against each other. The best way to get your best price is having a competitive environment. And you want to make sure that everybody knows they're in competition, but not in such a way that they think that money's the only thing, even though usually it is.
Largely, yeah.
You want to, but I mean, it could be like working at, say, Apple could be a lot better than, say, I won't name any company, particular companies, but there are tech companies that might not be as fun.
You'd feel better at your employees going to Apple than you would at some other company, right?
Exactly. And so you do your acquisition dance is actually it's not that different from selling your car or your house. You sort of hold out until you need to actually do the transaction. You try and make it competitive by doing the marketing to make sure that there's everybody who's a logical buyer is sort of aware and can sort of engage if they want to engage. Hopefully, you get a couple of offers where you can say, hey, company one, looks great. We'd love to be part of your team, but I've got a fiduciary to my shareholders, employees, and we have another offer that's more attractive than yours, even though we'd of course like to go with you. Is there any flexibility here? You never demand, or you could, but it's, often comes across in the wrong way. And sort of see where your price ends up. And again, it's kind of like,
you do that yourself as a CEO, or do you engage someone to do it for you?
Depends. Both are good. I've hired investment banks, both Microsoft, and I actually hired one for Xnor. Many investment banks position themselves as they will be awesome partners in marketing your company and finding acquirers.
Yeah.
That would be, how shall we put it? It can be overstated, I think would be the polite way to put it.
Yeah.
I mean, when we were at Microsoft, we look at investment banks, it's like, great, thanks for sending me this company. I already knew about them because I'm Microsoft, and that's a very competent team. We sort of know everybody in the market. So you're not really doing anything for us in terms of marketing and such. And so they're not particularly useful for that. Where they can be helpful is as a trusted intermediary to get information like you really need to up your offer by $20 million to the buyers, because investment bankers have to be really careful, never lie, never mislead, because then they blow up their whole reputation. They can't do deals.
Yeah.
So you need somebody who can be an intermediary who can say they like you, but you're a bit low, and and signal without you saying it directly, because the CEO, of course, is biased.
Yeah. And
because they're viewed, even though this is not necessarily true at all, as not being trustworthy when they say, oh, I've got an offer that's $100 million more than yours. But if the banker says it, that can be
possible,
more credible.
Yeah.
And so in terms of helping with that negotiation, and also they do have insight into what are current terms in terms of prices or indemnity or earnouts or things like that. They can be helpful for that. And so because I knew we were going to have a competitive, and I was engineering a competitive bid for Xnor, and I wanted somebody who was going to be viewed as a trusted intermediary so we could help, to help with the delicate, pay me more discussions. And I was like, cool, let me, come on board. And so we used them, and that worked out well. I think that was a good decision. So
yeah. Well, I've used it twice. I've used an investment bank here in New Zealand twice. So it's been great that when we've been we get people trying to acquire my company all the time. And I'm like, yeah, I'll always say yes. I'm interested to hear about it. And it hasn't been the right time for us yet. But,
yep.
It's been good going through an investment banker that can really help shape and be the intermediary and then bring in other offers if I wanted them at the time, but I didn't.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
awesome. So what advice would you give to Kiwi companies then that probably don't have the access to these acquisition opportunities? Should they be socializing themselves from New Zealand to other states the same time, like the same thing that you're saying, or?
Yes. In fact, I think any Kiwi company says, oh, I don't have the access to those acquisition opportunities, they're fooling themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe 40 years ago, you're in New Zealand, you're less known, it's hard to get to, you're not going to be amenable to a U.S. company. With the internet now, everybody's, a click away, and I don't really care if the technology or the people are in New Zealand or, Russia or wherever. I care about what they're going to be able to add to my company and make my company more successful and help me realize my strategic goals.
Yeah.
And so that Kiwi company should be doing the same thing that U.S. companies doing, is make yourself known and get connections at logical acquirers. If you're an enterprise infrastructure company, then make sure you know people who care about enterprise infrastructure at Amazon and Microsoft and at Google and so on and so forth. And kind of impress them with your professionalism and the quality of your technology, and and sort of try and do that in a sort of a non-stocky way.
Douchey way,
yeah. But just make yourself a known quantity and therefore a trusted quantity. At least 9 months, ideally more than that, and that you're in Wellington as opposed to Palo Alto, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And what's your take on? Do you still need to get on the plane as much?
Not as much, because you can do a lot of communication, a very effective communication, incredible communication over the net. So that's not a big deal. That being said, face to face,
you can't beat it, right?
What's it?
You can't beat it sometimes, being face to face with someone.
It can be beneficial, like events like we're at right now, the Sunrise Conference. You're wandering around and you just have these serendipitous conversations, and that can be helpful because you're watching body language. You can see body language a lot better than if it was over Zoom or something like that, and so that can be helpful. But I wouldn't over-position on, we must have a face-to-face meeting. One of the things we learned at the first company I ran, Auth0, was how powerful online selling was, even for very expensive enterprise infrastructure subscriptions.
Mm-hmm.
We were selling sort of $1 million deals without ever face-to-face meeting anybody at the customer.
Oh.
And we were able to do that because we'd done enough work to build our online reputation where they didn't really feel they needed to size us up personally, because they felt they already knew that they could trust us based on everything they saw online, and and also their experience in trying out the product.
And how do you do that? Just with your go-to-market messaging?
Yeah, but I'd be a little bit broader than that. In general, it's you do a bunch of content marketing where you are publishing stuff online, having people talk about you on social media, that you're curating as best you can.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the foundation is having a really awesome product, so people talk about you nicely. But creating a persona as sort of the trusted advisor in your segment for that company Auth0, it's a security company doing authentication as a service. It was like, hey, we are the developer's best friend. That was the persona we were trying to create. So we wrote, we had a bunch of blog posts that topics of interest to developers. Here's the Crystal programming language. We actually went right very much on authentication, because we found that when we did that, people just viewed it as an ad. If we did a generic, here's a topic of interest to a developer, it performed pretty well in terms of getting people to look at our website and such. We published tools that were useful to the developers. We'd presented conferences of things we'd invented, or techniques we were using, or management approaches, all of interest to developers. So create this persona where we're the developer's best friend. And by the way, we happen to have this authentication as a service offering, and love to talk to you more about it, but that's not what we're talking about today. Instead, we're talking about how to be a better developer. And that worked really well.
Interesting.
And you combine that with the what folks nowadays are calling PLG, i.e. the free sample, so that they hear about you. They
PLG is product-led growth for those that don't.
Exactly. Yeah. And they hear about you, and they can actually sort of try you out and do something that was sort of traditionally kind of hard, that might have taken hours or days, and they do that in 5 or 10 minutes because you've got a great product, and they say, oh, that's pretty cool. I should look more at this.
Yeah.
So that combination of the PLG and the content marketing basically sort of leads into really the two most powerful marketing techniques are the recommendation by the trusted friend and the free sample. And you automate the recommendation by the trusted friend by making yourself discoverable on Google with all the sentiment that it discovers being really positive. And then the free sample is, well, it's the free sample. Here you go. Here's, here's authentication for your hobby website, up to 100 users for free, or for, $19 a month or something like that. Make it, cheap and accessible. And with the promise of, and then if you wanted to have not 100 users, but 100,000 users for your corporation, it's really going to be just as easy. And that tends to kind of to work fairly well.
Yeah, it sounds simple. Let's all do it tomorrow.
It's, there's a bunch of things that have to come together. One of the myths I hear a lot about this product-led growth, PLG, is I'm going to do PLG with a free sample because everybody knows it's cheaper customer acquisition, and I can therefore fire my enterprise sales force. And I'm like, wait, no, stop, wait, no. It's a great way to get more qualified leads to the top of your sales funnel because more people know you.
That's when the sale starts. Though,
and know you and try you out. And so then when they finally reach out to the salesperson, it's not just like the, hey, I've got you on my list along with other 20. I've actually used you and I like you, and now let me get into more tactical questions. I'm better qualified, and further ahead. And so your sales team, your enterprise sales team, is a lot more effective with this PLG type motion. But it's not a replacement like many people mythologize. It's a complement.
So Auth0 and then Xnor and then now sabbatical. How long until you get itchy feet and do it again?
I've been doing the sabbatical thing for 3+ years now, and sabbatical is really being able to make my own schedule as I advise and sit on boards and such. Too.
Are you investing or anything, or like you?
A little bit. I mean, I'll occasionally invest, but sort of more of that investment is like to be particularly helpful to the CEO because of my halo or something like that. Because for a good company, they can get capital anywhere.
Yeah.
I think the sort of probably the more useful stuff that I'm doing is the advisory work, where I'm working with the CEO and the rest of the senior staff, and in building the company and scaling it, sort of architecting it, trying to get through some of the difficult, help them get through more easily some of the difficult problems that I dealt with sort of essentially on my own when I was first starting out because I couldn't find good advisors.
Yeah.
And then I was sitting on a few boards as well, which is sort of the same thing, but with a little bit more formality around it.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome, man. And you get to travel to New Zealand and you get to do all these things. How did the Blackbird team get you out here?
They just made a suggestion, and so it's like, well, I'm going to be down around that time anyway, so sure, let me swing by and I'll talk. Maybe it'll be useful to some of the entrepreneurs. And it's pretty satisfying if you can say something that helps an entrepreneur get through a friction point more quickly. Yeah. It's like, oh, cool, this actually worked, yay! So,
have you met the Auckland startup here, Auth0? Have you come across Auth0, the little Auckland startup?
I have, yes.
Yeah.
So,
Justin always looking for smart people that he can chat to. Yeah. Hey, so it's been fantastic talking with you, Jon. We're only getting half an hour pockets, and so I appreciate you packed a lot in there, man. Some really good nuggets, and I really appreciate that. Of course. I think the investor thing and the acquisition thing is really important here in New Zealand at the moment, especially in this market, right? People we've had this golden run over the last 5 years in New Zealand with so many acquisitions, people approaching New Zealand all the time, looking at opportunities over here. But one thing I think that Kiwis don't do well is they talk about what they're doing and start strategic conversations from an earlier stage. And so I think discussing that was really good. So thank you.
Yeah, I think a common, the imposter syndrome is common everywhere in the world. And I think it's maybe even more accentuated if you're in New Zealand and you don't get in sort of conferences and such in the US and realize that they're just as dumb as you are.
Yeah.
And so sort of starting from that, it's like, hey, we're all of us are sort of semi-incompetent, but we're all doing the best we can.
Yeah.
And by the way, man, we've got a great product because we're building on some great, IP out of academia, or, we just have brilliant engineers. That can happen anywhere in the world, and I think it happens with a greater frequency in New Zealand because of the environment here. It's just, I think, just an awesome innovation environment.
Yeah.
So,
and they just don't think big. We're just not thinking big enough here. We're not thinking about these conversations early enough. We're waiting for the market to come to us, and we should be going to the market.
Yeah, you could say that, or at least you should experiment with it by doing more stuff online inexpensively and seeing what the result is.
Yeah,
experimentation is a big key that a lot of people don't do enough of. So.
Interesting. Hey, thanks so much for coming on, John. I really appreciate your time. I'll let you get back out and enjoy the rest of the conference.
That's good. Well, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, cheers, mate. See you next time.
Take care.
So I hope now that you're thinking about who's your target audience to start having some of these conversations with, like, what am I building right now and who should know about this? I think there was some really good nuggets of information there from John, and something that we probably should get better at as Kiwis, right? Like, as he said, the internet's a small place, the world's a big place, but we can start having some of these conversations. We should be having some of these conversations. And so I'm glad I had that conversation with John so that you can go off and have your next conversation about how you can potentially look at getting acquired one day too. Hopefully Apple or someone buys you for hundreds of millions of dollars like they did with John. And so there's still a couple more to come out on this series. And so I hope you enjoy them. I hope you're liking, subscribing, following on all the platforms or whatever you're consuming it on. And I hope you're sharing it with some folks that also need to hear these stories as well. See you on the next one.
This podcast is produced by Jon Gelsey from Empire Films.